Practically speaking, asking China to give us an offer and begin some kind of new framework type of dialogue is the only choice we've got.
You're always called the princess. I don't know, how do you feel about that?
I don't mind that at all. I mean, I come from a privileged background, and I accept that wholly.
What's TPP's view on unification and independence?
Well, according to Dr. Ke and the Taiwan People's Party, we believe that the 92 consensus needs to be updated. It was set in a specific time and space, and he believes there's some ambiguity and certain things that could be clarified. And so when we get elected, our proposal is, or Dr. Ke's proposal is, that China should then send a new treaty over to explain clearly what they would like us to see and discuss.
You talk about a very interesting idea of Beijing coming up with a new idea or new framework or treaty.
Well, that's Dr. Ke's idea.
Yeah, Dr. Ke's idea. But do you personally think it's feasible, or is it too naive to think so? Because Xi Jinping, as we know, he's an authoritarian leader. He said he would push for unification by force if necessary. Those are very strong words. How could you expect a leader like him to come up with a new plan to negotiate, just to negotiate with Taiwan's leader?
I think the reality is that in U.S.-China relations, Taiwan is always a ping-pong ball. We will always be a price taker, not a price maker, meaning that we're only going to be able to accept the circumstances rather than be able to dictate things. So practically speaking, asking China to give us an offer and begin some kind of new framework type of dialogue is the only choice we've got. But if you look at the recent challenges with the WTO, right, and ECFA, for example, the current ruling party wants to have this discussion be raised at the WTO. From the TPP's perspective, trying to discuss ECFA in WTO has political intentions in addition to economic discussions.
How is it political? Isn't it like the right sort of like measure or means that you can go to if you find it unfair?
Yes. But from the TPP's perspective, it's because ECFA was signed outside of the WTO. And of course, that was under the one country, two systems framework. So now going out to seek WTO for help where Taiwan and China both have membership makes sense in a way, but it's also trying to add another level of political recognition in the midst of a very strained economic agreement and relationship. So the TPP's perspective is, it's great to suggest discussing the ECFA problems at the WTO, but the reality is that the other side is only willing to engage with us on a bilateral means between China and Taiwan. So you can either wait there and have them not come to the table, or you can be practical and try to, see what you can do in the meantime. But both avenues are obviously feasible, but at the moment you also have to be realistic, because there's a lot of, there are over 2,000 items under ECFA, right? And there's already 12 items being hit, and who knows how many more. And if we hold out for that long, it puts a lot of industries at risk, and not only industry, but jobs at risk.
But isn't it also important to not to depend on China that much? And as you probably understand, a lot of people wouldn't believe or wouldn't agree that ECFA is signed under this one country and two system kind of framework, because then that means it's an unfair treaty between the two sides, right? I guess that will be the Beijing's way of using terms.
The actual ECFA agreement between China and Taiwan actually benefits Taiwan a lot more. It allows Taiwan to export over 2,000 items tax-free. But China has not expected us to have a reciprocal relationship in terms of the same items the other way. So I do believe that de-risking from China and also de-risking from Taiwan is the trend at the moment. Many companies are asking their their suppliers to provide other geopolitical solutions, right, to provide their goods and services. So the reality is that at the moment, on any given year, it's around 40% of Taiwan's business that depends on ECFA. So unless we can build out a de-risking strategy with ASEAN, with India, and also with Europe, then for the moment, this is much more important than we'd like it to be.
Isn't that what the current government is trying to do? It's de-risking and trying to work with more ASEAN countries, or like Tsai Ing-wen's 新南向政策. Isn't it what they're trying to do?
They're trying. The current government is trying to de-risk, but the speed of this de-risking is not impactful enough for us to not pay attention to ECFA. That's the current reality.
On international media or local media, you're always called the princess. I don't know, how do you feel about that?
I don't mind that at all. I mean, I come from a privileged background, and I accept that wholly. I have both grandparents that are self-made, and my grandfather and my father raised me and brought me up with their honest, hard-earned money. So I'm very comfortable with that.
But then people might question you if you can really understand the struggles of the underprivileged population when you are living in a very different world from them.
Yes, I think the label of being princess could be seen as being out of touch and unrelatable, or initially when there was a question about my dual citizenship, which is not true. The real intention, I think, behind all of that is to say, are you like me? And are we on the same boat, right? Are we on this one island, on this one canoe together? And for me, actually, our family business, Shin Kong, has been in Taiwan for over 70 years. It was founded by my late grandfather. And we actually are one of the biggest employers in the country. We have over 200,000 employees. And I don't even know how many individuals and family members that would also affect. So for me, Taiwan's future is very much intertwined with Shin Kong and the staff that we have. And so my job actually in the last few years has been traveling to Southeast Asia. I was on the road about 10 days a month before COVID, to Indonesia and Myanmar and Vietnam and the Philippines and places, looking for business opportunities for the company, family company. And I became very much aware that these emerging countries are growing so fast, they're going through digital transformation, they have a youth surplus, and they're very open and willing to build out their economy. Plus, they've got that ASEAN network, right? So that also gives them a competitive edge. And so my fear, and coming back to Taiwan, is that things are a bit slower, people are a bit complacent, and I think Taiwan's a beautiful place, and we actually still have a lot of things we could do to kind of accelerate change and transformation. And so it's a sense of urgency where I was afraid that Taiwan might lose its competitiveness that made me join Dr. Ke in his election 3 years ago. And I'd also like to mention that I've actually traveled to over 60 countries around the world, in places maybe most Taiwanese people haven't been to. Brazilian favelas, Indian slums, Kenyan refugee camp, and where people live under $1 a day, and so I'm very comfortable, taking off my high heels or, kind of going native, if you will, and understanding social issues and trying to problem solve and coming from different perspectives to work together.